On the morning of January 1st, 2023, New Year's Day, someone in a quiet coastal suburb of Boston sat down and typed the following searches into the family's devices. How long before a body starts to smell? Dismemberment, and the best ways to dispose of a body. Can you be charged with murder without a body? Can I use bleach to clean my wood floors from bloodstains? Hacksaw best tool to dismember. How long for someone missing to inherit? The searches were made on a device belonging to the couple's 6-year-old son. The person typing them was Brian Walshe, a 50-year-old man who had been on house arrest awaiting sentencing on fraud charges. A man who would spend the next 3 days buying cleaning supplies, hacksaws, and new rugs from stores across Massachusetts. A man who, when his wife's employer reported her missing on January 4th, called to help them find her. Ana Walshe had been born in Belgrade, Serbia. She had come to America with nothing and built everything. A career, 3 sons, a life. And on the morning her husband was searching for the best way to dispose of a body, she was already gone. This is her story. Ana Ljubičić was born in 1983 in Belgrade, in what was then Yugoslavia. She grew up in a city that had survived wars and upheaval, attended one of Belgrade's finest secondary schools, and earned a bachelor's degree in French language and literature from the University of Belgrade. She was, by every account, brilliant, warm, and fiercely determined. In 2005, at 22 years old, she emigrated to the United States. She arrived with ambition, but without connections, without money, and without the safety net that most people rely on when they are starting over. Her first job in America was as a housekeeping attendant at a luxury inn in Virginia. She cleaned rooms, she worked holidays, she watched how the hospitality industry functioned from every level, and she took notes. Within a year, she had moved from housekeeping to serving. Within 2 years, she was managing reservations. She was learning the business from the ground up, not because she had no other options, but because she understood that the only way to truly know an industry is to inhabit every part of it. By 2008, she had moved to Massachusetts, where she took on a full-time role as reservations manager at the Wheatley Hotel in Lenox, one of the most prestigious small luxury hotels in New England. It was there, in those elegant Berkshire Hills, that she met a man named Brian Walshe. He was charming, older by nearly a decade, and he presented himself as a successful businessman with mysterious income sources. She described him to friends as her best friend. Love at first sight. They married in 2016. They settled in Cohasset, an affluent coastal town about 15 miles south of Boston, and had 3 sons together. By the time of Ana's disappearance, the boys were 2, 4, and 6 years old. She adored them. Her social media was a carefully curated record of how far she had come. Professional milestones, family moments, photos of her boys. Above one post she had written, "If it's to be, it's up to me." In February 2022, Ana achieved what she called her dream job. She was hired as a regional general manager at Tishman Speyer, one of the world's most prestigious real estate firms, overseeing high-profile properties and earning a salary of $220,000 a year. A Serbian immigrant who had arrived in America, cleaning hotel rooms, now managed buildings worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Ana Walshe had built her American dream brick by brick, from the ground up, with her own hands. That dream was still being built on the morning of December 31st, 2022, the last night of her life. Behind the polished surface of life in Cohasset, the Walshe marriage was fracturing, and the fault lines had been visible for years to anyone who looked closely. Brian Walshe was not the successful businessman he had always portrayed himself to be. For years, he had fabricated a persona built on borrowed money, fabricated wealth, and an elaborate art fraud scheme. In 2016, the same year he married Ana, he had agreed to sell 2 purported Andy Warhol paintings to a buyer in California for $80,000. The paintings were fake. He had sold the originals years earlier and replaced them with forgeries. The buyer quickly realized he had been deceived. A federal investigation followed. In 2021, Brian Walshe pleaded guilty in federal court to 3 charges of wire fraud and related offenses. He was placed on house arrest at the family home in Cohasset, wearing an ankle monitor, awaiting sentencing. He could not leave without permission. He had no income. He was entirely dependent on the woman whose career he had been riding for years. Ana, meanwhile, was thriving. Her new role at Tishman Speyer required her to split her time between Cohasset and Washington, D.C., where she kept a separate townhouse. She was building a professional reputation, earning her own money, and, according to court records, quietly making plans. Plans that did not include Brian. Court records show that in the months before her death, Ana had begun a relationship with another man, William Fastow, the realtor who had helped her find her Washington, D.C. townhouse. She spent Thanksgiving with William. She spent Christmas Eve with William. She missed the family Christmas and barely made it home before New Year's Eve. She had told friends she wanted to move her children to Washington, D.C. permanently, and that she feared what would happen when Brian was finally sentenced and sent to prison. Brian knew, or suspected. He knew his wife was pulling away. He knew he was about to lose the house, the children, and the carefully constructed identity that had always depended on Ana's stability. He also knew that he was the sole beneficiary of Ana Walshe's $1 million life insurance policy. On the evening of December 31st, 2022, Ana and Brian Walshe hosted a friend for New Year's Eve dinner at their home in Cohasset. The friend, a former employer of Ana's named Jem Mutlu, arrived that evening to find the family celebrating the new year together. The 3 of them ate dinner. They talked. They toasted the new year. According to Jem Mutlu, who would later testify at trial, the topic of a work emergency, the emergency that Brian would later claim sent Ana rushing to the airport at dawn, never came up that evening. Ana had no plans to leave early. She was present. She was at home. She was with her family on the last night of the year. Jem Mutlu left the Walshe home around 1:30 in the morning. Ana was alive. In the early hours of January 1st, Ana Walshe picked up her phone and tried to call the people she loved most. Her mother in Belgrade, her sister, her maid of honor. None of them answered. It was the middle of the night. None of them knew. Ana Walshe's phone was last active at 3 in the morning on January 2nd, still in the vicinity of the Cohasset home. She never boarded a flight. She never sent a work emergency message to her office. She never called a rideshare. She was at home, and then she was gone. Investigators believe Ana Walshe was killed in the early morning hours of January 1st, 2023, inside their home in Cohasset. There is no autopsy. There is no official cause of death, because her body was never recovered. But what the evidence shows about the hours that followed tells its own story. At 11:48 in the morning on January 1st, the first search for the word murder appeared on the family's devices. By the afternoon, Brian Walshe was moving. He drove to a Lowe's in Danvers, Massachusetts. He wore latex gloves. He wore a medical mask. He paid $463 in cash. Surveillance cameras captured him clearly. He bought a hacksaw, a hammer, wire snips, cleaning supplies, tarps. He went to a CVS. He bought 5 bottles of hydrogen peroxide